Chilly here with Sirius Dallas Moon Hour. The moon is in Pisces. Midheaven applying to Al Qaeda, ascendant 13 degrees Sagittarius. Lilith is 22 in Sagittarius. Mars is separating from Uranus and is in a bisextile with Neptune and Pluto, and I am craving a spirulina drink. This has been probably at least 2.5 decades of shadow work, inner work, external work, cosmic work, and I managed to get my body to crave the things that are healthy for me. But now I'm craving spirulina. This has been the second day. The oils are working in the sense that I'm beginning to get better, and then I'm craving like the healthy foods, and I'm like, well, I still need the oils. Now I need the healthy foods. The healthy foods cost money. It's summertime. In the wintertime, I take from the mellows and the growing things. Now, either I need to summer somewhere, which would probably be cheaper, and collect herbs with my way too Semitic nose. And I should wear a T-shirt. I'm not pro genocide. I'm against ritual abuse. Um, but in what language? Um, Albina from Privileged View had a note on Taylor Swift's wedding that got me to think that the most correct thing to do would be to buy the entire Jerusalem and block the streets for the coming year. Compensate the businesses. That's the only way we're gonna prevent children from being assassinated in like wars and bombs. But what about the rituals? That's it's not anti-Semitic. It's to all religions. Congratulations to the Swifties. You know what I want? A lot of people say, "Oh, billionaires should pay taxes," and I'm like, "Fuck taxation." This type of schooling, where they have expandable children, and they take a child, and they don't know if some children don't come back even. Like, change that. Taxing the rich is overrated. I'm saying it's the way that big like one no seriously once a child being raped, once a person being harmed, elite or not, that money is something that like that could how should I say that? Taxing the rich is like the easiest. It's kind of like, oh well, don't change anything, just spend money on the problem. And I'm absolutely for wealth and resources and the fact that hey, those monies were made on the basis of harming and children and people. But the point that generates the offenders is the core point of it. Like if I can have my mellows growing naturally and somebody picks spirulina from the ocean We can we can join them into like a green shake and share resources. But I think that that's the grand missing. By the way, big shout out to Albina for exposing a lot of the things that particularly new money people would usually be afraid to say when they run into old money for fear of not being accepted. and um, and it's probably very difficult out there because person tries to do such a channel, then there are all the target things of the channel. Then all the bots will tell them that everybody wants to hear about marrying rich, and then she's like, "Well, it's not so safe." And if you don't have the if you don't have the equal power to back it up, it's not so safe. And then to get to the actual people, and then the actual people are like, well, what about him? Kills him. Like, you can't talk about it. Then all the signs of the cults are there. And attempting to adapt the content. Um, I understood that in her Patreon she talks about like business ideas. I don't know how do they protect them because people would probably be afraid to share their calls to actions or business ideas when they don't have the protection. And this is another interface where we talk about investments and pitches and networks. How to how to prevent it from how to prevent it from going Epstein, particularly when we talk about the energy infrastructure. So, what it's true. I mean, watch Annika Lucas. I mean, and that was associated to the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. Um, and yet that conversation that is interclassist or not just interracial, but interclassist or inter disciplinary and beyond um, kind of like beyond the definitions of elite and common people or new money, old money. So many people that are new money or even not so new money worried about not looking old money, which is something that I think people that are not within, if I wouldn't watch like content creators, I would not never know about that. And I think that we're missing a lot. I think all of us should be, um, how should I say that? I cannot say should because it touches on all of our trigger points all at once, both for the both for the higher classes and for the people that are not. um, there is also the thing that a lot of families or some families would teach the children kind of like how to not get fooled with business, and then the children will have to beat the family in not in business deals. And how does that affect like life or the relations between people, because those are yeah, I mean people think I really love the episode when Albina talks about the issues of financial financial violence that there is within the wealth, and those children they can't like go to the welfare. They, um, and I'm not saying that the welfare. I mean, the welfare is held by a lot of people that don't provide for the conditions that would assist families. Um, but there's a lot of, it's not even gatekeeping, it's just a natural thing that people are in certain habitat or in certain environments, and there are certain rules, spoken and unspoken, and certain egregores or esoteric traditions, and the openness between is first of all an important venue of information, and it's also like, how do we create trust? It's not even about wealth redistribution, it's about creating trust that wasn't there both in higher classes and in lower classes. So for me, that is something that is kind of incredibly scary. um, Even when I think about my generation that grew up having access to a lot of informations, and then of course we wanted to drop the core thing that generates petering, to not leave it at play into the hands of extortion cults, but actually change the culture. And then it looks like we are amounting to nothing with all that was invested in us because we talk about the tabooest of taboos. Today I saw basically a lady that was basically trafficked and she was in the street. And then I saw her and I was like, probably she's under psychiatric drugs, which are also not good. And I'm like, how do I prevent? So I tried to think about the next step, and I was like, oh, wait a second. I ran into a social worker that, and then I named that social worker because I'm like, hey, the path needs to be paved for, because if a person that, I was avoidant, but if a person that was trafficked goes to social workers to try to rehabilitate, and they will go through the path that tries to put them in a workplace when, to begin with, the work sector was designed in a way that was not compatible to wealth and well-being, that is both well-being erotic and unerotic. And at every step of the way, we run into so many things. Like, a billion people think I committed treason in them. Every time I wake up in the morning is um, and I think in every sector, I think Albina probably ran into that a lot, because in every sector, everybody's first. It's kind of like you put a pebble into the water and the baggage slashes at you first. And, and this is, and then all of us are probably making kind of like the worst mistakes, both in terms of phrasing or behavior or just overwhelm. It's kind of like, hey, we're in that room, or we're in that egregore, or we're in that point of interference, and a lot of really, do you know how hard they work on making people feel so grateful to basically overwork themselves, be sexually violated, but oh, be important and be well treated, and then it's like not wanting to step over any ego, but it's kind of like we got billionaire families where all the moons are incompatible nakshatra, is naval nakshatra, and that means lots of children ideas, or metaphorical children, or creative projects, and I'm like, that's not good. And then everybody's caught up in all kinds of complexes about their attractiveness or their a lot of things that are so there was so much design so that people would get caught up in those hang-ups where it's like, what's the fascinating thing, because at that level people learn to maneuver energy, and it's life energy, so they learn to bring the energy up from the spine. And I'm like, and they still and they still and they still are children. But there's also a lot of information running also in the ether of curating things that we didn't think are possible to curate. Um, and I know that those things are existing. And at every juncture of the road, there are people that have like their own shaped thought, and they all try to adapt themselves to one another. So we're just walking like a kaleidoscope of mirrors that don't reflect anything coherent. I was thinking about my conversation with Nama. She walks to me and she makes this 666 hand gesture. So I'm like, okay, she's marking that she's from there. And then we have an entire conversation. Then she mentions that thing that I talked about, where she mentions, and I'm like, okay, that's another Ghislaine Maxwell. But then the people at those places also don't have the point of interferences to other things. It harms everybody's real estate eventually, because it's like, okay, so that billionaire is going to drop an A bomb on that billionaire's land, and everybody, it's like, it's not like we can't see that happening. And that land is a country, but they weren't aiming for the country. um, People talked about AI agents being toddlers with bazooka. Then imagine people that grew up into website files. Now, and then you kind of like you want to tend to your inner child phase, and then something catches up to you, and you're like, oh, wait a second, we could close entire Jerusalem, compensate the businesses, and prevent children being harmed about genocide that they did not commit as children. It's like, oh, wait a second, couldn't I do that like in Gaza? It's like, oh, there's universal basic income. People are like, oh, but they're gonna criticize the government. And like, right now, the people that don't have access to money can't criticize the government anyway. So it's not like this problem didn't exist. And on the other hand, there's this, oh, China is building the bricks and so many things, and it's like, we're scared if there's surveillance like we're doing. They had a cultural revolution. They don't know what they'll do. Um, I remember when I was in Model UN, that's the first time that I saw Oxforders, like anthropological. there was so much programming going on there. Nervous system hacks from here to tomorrow. It's like one time. Yeah, and the amount of racist jokes that went on. Greek people, I know it's not politically correct, but Greek people don't feel the same way about their guardianship of the archaeological sites as the Brits do with Monty Python. I, um, but it was a lovely thing. It's kind of like, oh, you're from Israel, good morning. You are Iran, you are Iraq. And we had to, and we had to represent. So I was representing Iran and Iraq on Model UN, and I had a friend that was, I think, doing a thesis about Zoroastrianism that kind of affected the policies towards Iran. Um, I absolutely don't remember what I said in the conferences. And then I was Germany. Um, and just thinking about the way that, because that was kind of like, we had people that were working in the UN, like the secretary. I don't know if the Warren Epstein list or the World things. Like I may have been face to face with a Rolodexer. I mean, um, UN Secretariat. Um, and even the way diplomats are taught as a part of their training is completely different. Is completely different. Is completely different thinking. Then I just remember me 555 as I speak. Changes, changes. Well, a lot of transportation in here now. I just remember the first time um, I got notified that I'm gonna be. I think it was Iran, and then my TA met me on the grass in front of the building, like many students, and she was like, he went was like, I am Iran, because in Model UN there is no I am, there is Iran says, and she was like, oh, you find it funny. So transmission, the transmission from one room to another, even as a model, is so overwhelming. And Um, and the many ways and trajectories that people come into those circles with, the people that come from lineages where they were trained. But here's the thing: when we say, oh, certain people were trained from infanthood, there's another thing that goes into that is the training, and that training, it's like people have, it's both the competition where certain people were way more trained from the get-go, but at the same time the unlearning of people that were trained. I just think about what it was like for me in academia. I was in the open apartments, which was, they called it developing neighborhoods. So were basically the strongest neighborhoods in the city. And then there was a project to knock them down and make them into crime neighborhoods. So then the students come, and that was one thing. And then there's another thing where you go from um, showing solidarity with a friend going to the gay or the proud house, um, not even sure if like, um, because with all those nervous system hacks, kind of like not even sure if it's relevant to the self or not, but it's kind of like, oh well, at least showing solidarity. And then at another big event at the pool from the so-called open apartment, the family says, oh, those that are gay, those that are this, they should be burned, they should be killed. And I'm like, well, I'm just the person that got her daughter into connecting with the person that knows, that is from 80 to 100, which is an elite unit that girl will not get in on Manila. Only 2 years later learn about Prisoner X. That was, I did not cover Prisoner X because as long as I did not have the ability to be safe and free in another country as a single woman, I would not be able, because I thought it's like, I don't know, Palestinian or some sort of a flotilla, but no, 80 to 190 19 years old soldier. That's the unit that we dodged at the school where I was living with my mother at my grandmother to study. It was not a boarding school, but it was a public school that was the type of public school that would take living with my mom and my grandmom to get it for the region, and they all wanted us to study high tech. So it's kind of like making one plus one. I went into filmmaking and took French. We dodged 80 to 100. I didn't even know it was 80. It was like dodge the intelligence, and they tried to seduce us. They said, "Oh, Israel came up with a way which is without torture, and the MI6 didn't want it, and they were good with torture." Then I'm editing school, and there is a parliament member in the room. Everybody wants me to ask a yellow question. I refuse to ask a yellow question. They take me away from future panels. I don't know if Avron Borg was on Epstein list or not. And it's kind of like the more competent you are, the more society is like overwhelmed. Um, and then when we think to build stuff or to build stuff together, there's like so many things to cover. For example, until woke culture wasn't overturned, we did not hear about, let's say, ritual abuse and the forced gender changes that were considered as conspiracy theory. Big shout out to Anya Week on that. Um, and like for anything to be successful and yield and to change the system, because the system is changing inevitably. It's like either we're going to let it get into stagnation and erosion, or we're going to change it into something that's actually benefic for everyone. And this is where the conversation about the biggest taboos comes in, because you know, just like we're not supposed to get married without talking about all the things, both the taboo sexual things, the taboo fertility things, the taboo um, even therapy things. Think about couples usually make it an agreement that they will agree to go to therapy or to seek therapy when there are interventions like operations and um, infiltrations. It's not even sex espionage, it's basically infant trafficking ring that hone in on the dissociated infant trauma of, let's say, the billionaire or the couple. Um, and there are so many different people with different points of views about the world or different awarenesses. Um, and then when a person comes like, wait a second, that's the one thing that changes everything. That's the thing that creates extortion calls. And that's the thing that exposes billionaires, because and not only that, that's the thing that generates people delighting at evil, so to speak. Because it's a design. And they try to kill the empathetic side of people by scamming them or extorting them or traumatizing them. And then there are societies where since childhood children have to betray in order to be a part of the society, and it's just children. Also, there are things, rituals, and I think it's called personality calls that esoterically, basically, they permeate the consciousness of children and infants, and then it's a child, it's an infant, it doesn't even know what these things are. And then a parent that tries to grow a child the best is running into, like, they don't even know what's happening, or they think everything is fine and it's not. And um, I think my generation grew up with a lot of opportunities that other people didn't have, and this is where the veil was thinning. It's like we would be 17 years old with, you know, drinking hot chocolate at IBM, and they were downright telling us that they were seeking to double the expenses of people without people noticing. Like they were honest about what they wanted from us, and that goes to J.P. Morgan basically that was behind those type of projects. And thinking about it was probably Epstein infiltrated. Um, so we got the pathway to the big billionaires, even if not in a personal conversation, and a lot of the opportunities and the thinning veil was there, and then it was like, so what do we want? Like we're told what they want. We're told we wanted. Some of us, those that are not dead because they went on with those scams, like the Bitcoin, like certain the FTX guy. I think that he applied to, let's say, the JP Morgans, and then was disposed of. And then those of us that didn't were further and further marginalized, because the whole point was to use that thinning of the veil to change the trajectory on all the points of interferences, not just how money is made, but our overall life satisfaction, and the understanding that that needs to be increased in both the elite and the people. It's not about, oh, we're going to take the wellness from the elite and bring it to the people. Um, the elite has the cold problems. We think, you know, just throwing a name out there, Scientology. Um, the culture of management and activating, which is since childhood. Today I was on the train and there were a couple of children, okay, not even approaching teenagehood, with little hats, and some of them Orthodox, and throughout the conversation they were like talking vulgarly about basically pretty much activity that would be the equivalent of rape in a way. And then helping a friend, calling a friend a tzaddik, so tzaddik is like a saint or something. Like all of these things, all of those things all together, and me wondering, are they activated? Were they already ritually abused? Are there adults that are activating the conversation? It's not just about, oh, they learned it from somewhere. It's about, are they activated within the child conversation to normalize that behavior, let's say, towards a woman, in between being a buddy and helping a friend and being a tzaddik or a saint, and how that gets into the um, the mind of the child, the mind that still learns, that mind that is easily absorbing the world. So that these young children will grow to be what the world called the little hats. And do the people that do that actually are all of them actually little hats? It's another open-ended question. And then the secular people talk about military service while normalizing the same things. And I have big shout out to Annika Lucas for really honing in on that, I know I was affected from these type of things a lot as a child. And then children where, let's say, one of the parents were missing, or then they could crave that the present secure attachment patterning, but it could manifest as erotization of people that are older, or expectation that the authority figures will be that missing, and constantly waiting for them to not abuse, to not. And then people that were harmed by authority figures and older people could actually be attracted to younger people. Not children, but definitely younger people. Or even the people that look, young and fit and um, um, and then what happens is also the threshold is kind of like, oh, when a person goes into relaxed arousal and sets boundaries and calls for secure attachment, it's like breaking, not, people talk about breaking glass ceilings, it's breaking a global glass ceiling. It's kind of like it's not even accessible to royalty, to bankers, to energy infrastructure companies. And um, there were some privileged few that wanted to talk about the politics and lack of governance in the world. And now here is the thing. There is also the hemispheres and electricity stuff. Wow. Um, I went to a from afar thing that was trying to resemble that. Um, and yeah, 2 days to summit. No summits, and I was looking at the volcanoes that were in Europe. Um, the compounding understandings is kind of like kill all the rapist, and then kind of like, no, we need to terminate the thing that generates sex offenders, which is basically, and then it's like kill all the rapists, kill all the rapists. Um, in entrepreneurship, there is also the understanding is like, if I have, let's say I had a company, I know I'm supposed to tend to my inner infant as well. Um, let's say I have a company. If my employees won't be able to have a land and a house independently of ability to work, then not only is gonna get it the company, it's kind of like nothing that I'll do will amount to anything. And it's a non-negotiable. Not all of them will be able to work, like my grandmother worked and lost her 2 feet to work for so and so years, and we're not living in a day and age where people are even compatible for that. And it's not about them being spoiled, it's about them being the result of prolonged both toxicity and harm that not all previous generations had to deal with from that perspective. So things become intolerable when we're supposed to change them, and it's not about adapting to society. I think the type of businesses the type of, the generation that craves, or probably every generation craves, to make wealth in a certain way. And then you hear about, oh, the Chinese pride themselves about also the way that they make wealth, and even if they didn't succeed, they at least tried and so on. And I'm like, yeah, but the cultural revolutions are scary. And it's a very hierarchical society, which is not compatible for everyone. I definitely appreciate the air turbines that they put in mountain areas ahead of time. And then, the other things, the ghost cities, the depopulation, we have that in the West as well, and as a global issue. Um, there are a lot of hidden, sometimes not a lot of, like, also smoothing issues that are like hidden ego wars in the ether. Um, and first of all, the opportunities, which is the thinning of the veil, and the understanding that the desires to preserve. It's not even, I think, about preserving social class as preserving the tribe or tribalistic thinking. Um, there's always the issue of global ideas and local ideas. I remember when I asked about why don't feminists and LGBTQ unite fights, and then a lady told me the lesbians and the gays are on completely different trajectories because some gays are misogynic. And I was like, huh? This, um, yeah, and it's kind of like the Jews in Israel. If you go to Bnei Brak, you find the most racism ever amongst Orthodox Jews, because each stream sees the other. For they're all Gornikim right now. May. No, that's Arad. Um, Yesterday I met a person, two secular people, and they left Arad, and they said like, "Oh, we're crying about Arad." I said, My parents were crying about Bnei Brak. So if we'll be crying about Arad, we'll be crying about the entire country. Um, but those that were okay um, with tenets being violated can't claim the secular card. It's like they love making money selling to those people that are not secular. But they didn't like the city becoming not secular. Because of course the thought was that those will be investment properties, and you take any villa and dissect it into 4 or 6 or 8. But then families decided to reside there. They said, "Oh, they have, and they can unionize and so on," and the secular people didn't. And we can't find the atrocities that we attribute to the Orthodox without abolishing them within secular society. You know, people say, "Oh, they should be learning mathematics." We had a genius of mathematics with us in academia. Then he was filmed with his boyfriend. He had to film pedophilia movie, probably to some extortion call. Then he got disposed of. Now, of course, I'm not sorry that the person that was filming pedophilia was arrested, but the onset of that tells me that he was probably ritually abused as a secular man, as a child, as a boy, so that there would be an onset, and then that would be continuously normalized with no exposure to secure attachment and no discussion about relaxed arousal that is not fantasy based but embodiment based. And even if he would try to go into that phase, he would be disturbed by nervous system hacking and mind control. And so actually the closer he was to the elite, the less junctures there would be. And then whoops, he probably will think about how he would, or he begins to normalize misplaced arousal he had as a child too, let's say an adult. And then if it worked upwards, there's the fear that it can go and work downwards. For me, I was at a juncture where it was miraculously stopped from developing, because both upwards, I was even in a situation when a person that was psychologist, that was astrally sexual with me, asked me what do I look for in the figure of the father or the dad, and I said an inspiration. He thought somebody that would make decision or somebody that would be basically handler. Um, so upwards are required for there to be, and I know it seems like an inconceivable requirement because there was a eroticizing of, and then to go out of that eroticism was something that only a couple of years later was And I did, by the way, and I was teaching English back then, and I successfully went through the phase of being the adult, where the adult is eroticized, let's say in teenagerhood, and it was not easy for me, not because I was tempted, but because I felt like I wanted to run away from my own body, because I didn't like being looked at erotically, even even by a person that was not adult. Okay, well, the risk was not that I would be sexual with him; it was just that I felt like the basically terrible that being looked at erotically, or that somebody, if somebody would be attracted to me, I would be, because it was not. Um, but I went, it's kind of like successfully through that phase, but then my life was threatened actually from the upward trajectory from when I was the child. Um, and even still, it's like there were a lot of curations for these things that came from places I don't even know, because at those phases the person is like, they are like a personality cult, so the consciousnesses of other people are permeating basically the body of the infant. um, and then you see also the psychologist being the many people. Now some of this hive mind, or let's say the feature of hive mind or telepathy or thinking together, is not a negative feature. And then there is the question of, okay, what about our own sovereign bodies, individual bodies and souls, and intimacy that is actually, you know, um, supportive of our individual well-being, and honoring the non-erotic. Now, when you think about billionaires not being aligned and attuned with that either, you understand that something is off, and that offsets the economy in a way that taxing the rich without tackling that is not going to help. And in tackling that will inevitably bring the wealth redistribution. I really like that Albina said that some billionaires had the status symbol of bringing many children because it meant that they have money. And just think about it. It's like, it's life. It's bringing life to the world. But that was so reduced, so that it became a status symbol of the number of children that people have, without asking ourselves about readiness,